So I might be a bit late to this party, but I finally got a chance to sit down and watch Gladiator 2 the other day, and there was something that sort of compelled me to want to do an entry for it. Unfortunately, I don't get to do entries for every movie I watch or every show I get sort of into, whether I binge it or not. I try to do it as much as I can, but I really wanted to sit down and talk about this because I feel like there's something that can be discussed about what Gladiator sort of, or Gladiator 2, I should say, sort of has done that I feel is sort of compelling, I guess the right word is. So for those who haven't sat down with the movie yet, for those who haven't seen Gladiator 2, it is a direct sequel, though it does take place many years after the events of the first one. The first one, I believe, came out 2001? 99? What year did the first one come out? 2000. The first Gladiator came out in 2000. So it's 24 years, but the movie itself, Gladiator 2, specifies that it's actually 16 years later after the events of the first one. Now, granted, that doesn't really have much to do with anything. It's just still, it matters to what the story is that they build up. Now, there might be a lot of spoilers in this entry. I'm going to try to keep it as minimal as possible, but the movie's been out for over 6 months now, and if you haven't seen it and you wanted to, I mean, people have already been talking about it. Things must have been spoiled for you by now, but, you know, if I spoil anything for you, I apologize. You have been fair warned. So Gladiator 2 takes place 16 years after the events of the first one. Now, the first one caught a lot of heat because it's actually a film it's a great film, but it's not historically accurate in any way. It uses historical figures, but the titular character of Maximus Decimus Meridius does not exist in historical context. So the story in and of itself is sort of a fan fiction in a way. It's a fantasy tale, sort of just taking actual history and imprinting this story onto it. Sort of how, like, yeah, Titanic is a sad story, the movie is tremendous, but that whole love story doesn't actually exist. Nobody really cares about the love story in real life because that wasn't actually a point of reference to anything that actually had to do with the Titanic. So this is the same premise. It's the premise of it's just a great movie, but because it's actually trying to portray some portion of history and it's using fictional characters and it's not using accurate representations of what happened in historical manner, it sort of lost its flair to a lot of people, even though it is a still very, very good movie. So why 24 years to make a sequel? I don't know why. I haven't really cared to read anything about why it took so long. I remember hearing rumors about it over the last decade or so, so it's definitely been in the process of trying to be made, and I don't know how deep that goes. I mean, it could very much well be this thing where nothing happened and just nobody wanted to do it, or it was stuck in some sort of production limbo. If I see anything worth it, maybe I'll do a more in-depth video where I actually do some research. But in all actuality, Gladiator was a movie that really didn't need a sequel, and the fact that they were actually able to get one going and one finally was released, okay. I This is why I waited so long, because it's not really that big of a deal to me. Like, Gladiator wasn't some life-changing movie, and I know that maybe some people it might have been this movie that they hold dear to their hearts. I know really the people who hold all of these great movies that are out there. There are people that just hold on to one particular movie forever, and that's the movie that they will claim is the movie they'll die with. You know, Titanic, or it could be Gladiator, it could be Batman, it could be True Romance, it could be A Star Is Born. People will sit there and just say this is my movie, and you can't say shit about my movie ever because I will always defend my movie. Okay, if Gladiator's your movie, I'm sorry, but it's not a movie that left some sort of impact that I'm going to sit there and return. If I return to any Russell Crowe movie, I'm telling you right now, it's Cinderella Man. Cinderella Man, to me, is a way better movie in comparison to Gladiator. That's just my opinion, and that's not me saying that Gladiator is not a good movie. It's just, if I had the opportunity to watch either Gladiator or Cinderella Man, I'm watching Cinderella Man. That's just my opinion. But I do understand that Gladiator is still a tremendous feat movie. It won a whole bunch of Oscars. Russell Crowe does fantastic in the role, And when you're talking about the idea of a sequel, sequels can sometimes shit on the legacy of its predecessor, which is why having a sequel come out 24 years later just feels like it's gonna fall into that realm. Like, why would you wait so long? But then again, I didn't read up into anything why it wasn't made. All I know is the sequel finally came out, and it does a really good job. It's not a sequel that doesn't necessarily not need to be there. I heard a lot of negative things about it, and I really didn't see it. I was watching the movie and I was thinking, and I went in. I don't usually like to. I try to be open minded, but I went into it with a very biased perspective of I'm expecting this to kind of hit the way I'm reading it's hitting. And a lot of people had some disappointments with it from what I was seeing. Of course, it got its praise. It is still a movie that deserves its praise where it was given. It's got really good ratings as far as I can see, but it's nothing in comparison to the first one. I think the first one blew it out of the water in so many different ways. Like, what's the first one's Rotten Tomatoes? Okay, the first Gladiator is certified fresh, 80 to 87. The second Gladiator is 70 to 82. So that's a drop, which doesn't necessarily is a bad thing, but it is telling when you consider, you know, what a sequel could have possibly been for the original film. And living up to the expectations of the original film, I do think that Gladiator 2 does a good job. I think it's a really good story that they decided to tell. And I was reading one thing that I kind of didn't get, and that is that people were saying that the Denzel Washington character doesn't need to be there, which I think is weird because he actually does play a really pivotal role in that story. Now, granted, could anybody else play that role? Possibly, but if you were to make it anybody else besides the new Gladiator's slaver, the ending might have not hit as hard as it does. So you have the character that's played by what's this actor's name? I don't think I've seen this actor in anything else. Paul Mescal. Oh, I totally have seen Paul Mescal in other things. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. So Paul Mescal is the main character. He plays Hanno. Now, Hanno is just this soldier in this other part of the country that it gets invaded by Rome, and the army is being led by the Pedro Pascal character. Now, they are conquering other territories in the name of Rome, and they go to Nano's hometown and they demolish it. And they take all the survivors and they turn them into slaves. They bring him back to Rome. He then gets sold to a slaver, the Denzel Washington character, who sees some sort of fight in him and turns him into a gladiator. And then there's a lot more of the storyline of what's going on as far as, say, like politics, I guess you could say, than there is the actual gladiator stuff. Like in the first one, the gladiator aspect was very much more prominent than it is in this one. And that's my opinion, because the first one was very much about the revenge and him being a gladiator. This one is more about what role is everybody playing, because essentially Paul Mescal's character, Hanno, wants to go after Pedro Pascal because he's the one who killed all of his people. So he wants his head. Well, not all of his people, his wife, essentially, the lady he married. So he wants to go after him to seek his head. He wants revenge. Pedro Pascal is married to Connie Nielsen's character from the first one. Now, you don't see the son she had from the first one for a good portion of when she's first introduced. That son, who I believe, and I don't remember this from the first one, they say is Maximus's son, even though there was some sort of connotation that he was actually Commodus's son, the Joaquin Phoenix character. But it turns out he was Maximus's son, and as the movie progresses, you learn that Hanno is actually the son, and she sent him away after the fall of Maximus because they knew that Maximus was dead, Commodus was dead, and him being like a 10-year-old boy would be next in line, and they were going to come after him. So she's like, I got to hide you because I'm not going to let them murder you to try to take the throne. So she sends him away. All right, he goes and he comes to some other place where he gets kept a secret, and he just sort of forgets. He forgets who he is because he wants to create this new life. And as he creates the new life, he becomes detached, so he doesn't return to it, and he forgets in a way, or at least he is betrayed that he forgets. So now he is back in Rome, starting to remember and realize that he is now Rome's new savior. Because of course, even after Maximus is dead, and you think, oh, Rome's going to go back to normal. No, Rome doesn't go back to normal. It gets taken over by this set of brothers who are the weirdest characters, and I don't really understand 100%, and maybe I just wasn't fully paying attention, and that might be my fault, but I really didn't get why those two were the emperors. It made no sense to me why they were the emperors. I think there was a small 2 sentence thing where they were talking about how they just walked in from the woods and they had like been raised by wolves, and so they were just like, yeah, emperors. Like, I didn't get why they were emperors over anybody else. That didn't make any sense to me. So Hanno Slaver, the Denzel Washington character, he's playing the political angle of things. So you see him moving all these pawns around and playing with people and getting himself in position to act as part of the council to the brothers. And that is sort of what leads you to realize that this whole time you think he's there for Hanno. He's not. He's there for himself. So he becomes the overarching villain of the whole story. And then Hanno accepts that he's really the son of Maximus. He sort of leads the slaves into a rebellion, and he overthrows. Well, he doesn't necessarily overthrow them because they are both essentially murdered by the Denzel Washington character, and then Denzel Washington is essentially murdered by Hanno in a duel, or he's beaten by Hanno in a duel, I should say. And then, of course, there's this huge uprising where everybody gets behind Hanno, and Rome is essentially saved. I do appreciate what they did with that story, and I've fully like did the dummies version of what that story is. There is a lot more that probably could be gone more in depth, but that's kind of the cliff notes, if you will. And I'm not rushing through it in a sense that it's meant to be rushed through. It's just that that's all you really need to know when it comes to what this film has to offer. And you have to understand, they do it well. It's done very well. Even though I can't explain it well, it's done very well, and the story is really, really good when you consider it to be a direct sequel that follows direct characters, and it makes sense. It's not even like, originally I thought it was a reimagining because it looks way too similar, and I get it. It very much is sort of, some things are copy paste, but I mean, you're talking about gladiators. You can't really deviate too much from what a gladiator is actually doing. You know, that's basically saying that everything is Spartacus at this point. But they're able to keep it separated and still keep it where it feels fresh, because it's no longer the revenge is the focal point like the first one. The focal point is the politics. It's the overthrow of the emperors and trying to figure that out, and then having your plans foiled, and then having to do other things to make it work. But then you have this other guy who's in there, and you didn't even realize that he was playing everybody from the beginning. The twists that they're able to come up to do and make it work and make it make sense, it's good. I'm not going to say it's the greatest movie. I'm not going to say, did it win any awards? Did this? Okay, it won top 10 films at the National Board of Reviews Award. It was nominated for a bunch of stuff. Best visual effects for the Satellite Awards. It was nominated for a whole bunch of shit, but it did not win anything except for a couple of no-name things at not such big deal things. Like, it didn't win any Golden Globes, it didn't win any Oscars, it didn't win any Critics' Choice, it didn't win any BAFTAs. It didn't win the Screen Actors Guild Award. It didn't win a lot, but it was nominated for a lot. And again, it's trying to live in the shadow of another film that was tremendous, and that's what happens with sequels sometimes. They just don't live up to people's expectations. But I feel like there was a lot of people kind of bashing on this, and it wasn't really deserved. It is a good movie, and it is a good sequel. It's definitely one of the better sequels to something that fits and makes sense. It's just weird that it's took so long to make, and there's got to be a reason for that, but you know, whatever that is, it still thankfully led to something that was worthwhile in the long run. If you made it this far, you are awesome. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and let YouTube know I'm doing a good job. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and check out the other videos in the studio. All of this helps support me and the channel, so it is very appreciated. Whether you're new or returning, thanks for watching. Cheers.